close.
Yeah, well, when you're on camera, it looks farther away.
You looked at me like, why are you so close to me?
Well, you went, like I'm in your personal space. Welcome back to another episode of Booze and Books, and today's theme is the dark and stormy. So because we have liked doing these, and I think other people have received these very well, we decided I wanted to up the quality a little bit better, and the number one thing that I wanted to upgrade is the sound, because it's very echoey in here. We have tile floors, high ceilings, not much to absorb the sound, and I don't know if this little guy is going to make it better, but I have a little clip-on mic that I attached to an actual podcasting mic stand before. I definitely wanted to, sound quality was number one that I wanted to improve, and then lighting a little bit. There's only so much I can do with lighting. We're in our kitchen, dining room main area. There's big giant windows in front of us, so it is what it is for now until I decide to really make things spectacular.
Make it sound like we have this majestic home.
Maybe I want them to think that. They don't know. They can't see anything else. So today's episode, Dark and Stormy, we're going to keep with the same theme as the book tag that we did. And the Dark and Stormy, we were talking about dark-themed, darker tone books, which is in the name. But to go over the drink first, very simple. It's essentially a mule. So it's called the Dark and Stormy, and it's actually, apparently it's patented by Gosling. They have a patent on the drink because they specifically want you to use their dark rum, which is the classic way to make it. But you can make it with any dark rum. So you want a dark rum anyway, and then it is just with ginger beer and lime juice from there. So essentially it's a mule. That's basically the recipe for a mule, except it's with dark rum, and if you're making it with Goslings, then it's a Dark and Stormy. But this is basically close enough, and they're pretty dang good. And it's better than some other ones that we've had. It's not the best, but it's still really good.
It's really good, yeah.
So,
I mean, I love ginger, so it's right up my alley.
Yeah, and apparently you can still make it with, which I've made a ginger syrup before. If you boil and extract all the essence of ginger with some sugar syrup, and then do it with soda water and rum. Apparently that's also really good. But we're having more of a classic version of it. And then we're going to talk about books. So, Dark and Stormy books. Now, I'll get one of, I have way more because I read much more dark books than you do. I just think I like it a bit more. Who cares about light-hearted and feeling good?
I like light-hearted and feeling good.
Exactly, that's right. So the one that I talked about on the original tag was the Ash and Sand trilogy. I have already came out with a Why You Should Read video on the Ash and Sand trilogy. It's in my top 10 of fantasy series of all time. It's fantastic. There are literally storms, dark and stormy times in this series. From page 1, you get the feeling of how bleak it is. I mean, in the very first, sentence or at least paragraph, the main character, Ruka, is eating the heart of a child because he needs to do whatever he needs to do to survive. Exactly. See that right there? And you just get the feel of him right off the bat because he is 100% a ends justifies the means character. He's in a frozen tundra and he needs to survive. So you got to do what you got to do to survive. And that's basically the same theme of him through the entire series of he has this goal, he needs to get it done. And he gets it done, but the means sometimes aren't great, but he still gets it done. And it does end up weighing heavily on him, but still, it is fantastic because of that. The morally gray of the character. Ash and Sand trilogy, of course, I recommend because I've already talked about it several times here.
So I also went with the book that I used for the last video, or the one that we did before, The Way of Shadows, which is the first in the with Azeroth and Durzo. Oh my god, what is the name of the book?
Oh,
the Night Angel trilogy.
Oh,
so
that's why you say Azeroth, yeah. Because I was like, isn't that Faithful and the Fallen?
No.
What's the evil guy in Faithful and the Fallen?
Well, it's Azeroth, but it's spelled Azroth, not Azroth.
It's Leviosa, not Leviosa.
Exactly. So I went The Way of Shadows, which is the first in the fall. What is it?
Night Angel?
Night Angel. The Night Angel trilogy.
Fallen Angel? Good start.
Yes, yes. So, an orphan that seeks an apprenticeship with a magical assassin, basically. And in order to become the assassin's apprentice, basically, is to kill Rat, who is the main bully in the series, the Guild Fist, if you will. And he beats and rapes Azeroth's best friend. And that's how the whole, like, trilogy starts before he becomes basically the assassin's apprentice. And it's dark. It's very dark. It doesn't get better. It's like a...
Who doesn't like beating a bully, though?
Yes, but, you know, the way that he did it and the way that it happened and then everything that happens afterwards, it doesn't go, like, to, oh, it's great, he beat the bully and all of this. It just gets darker and darker and darker as it goes. To the point where there's rape and there's murder and it's with kids, which is not okay with me. And then the second book, it's a lot of the same. It never gets better. It just gets darker and darker. And I don't know what the third book has in store because I haven't read it. Because after the second book, I was like, I can't do this anymore. This is very sad.
The more you talk about it, and the more I thought about it, I feel like I need to reread it because I read this back in 2014, and I don't know how I'd stand on my list now. Like I did my top 10 list not long ago, and I wrote it down, but I couldn't even think of what I would rate it, and like because I have my own rating system. She probably didn't know that.
I did not know that.
And I couldn't even think of a rating for it because it's been so long since I read it. So I feel like I need to go back and read it. There's part of me that wants to because of that, but the other part of me is, well, A, I don't reread any books, and two, I just don't. I want to keep thinking that it was good, and I don't want to go back and like be disappointed.
I don't think you would be disappointed because you like the dark kinds of books.
Yeah.
But I
think those issues that you brought up wouldn't bother me.
No, I don't think they would bother you. They just bothered me as a human.
Yeah. So I'm not human. All right. Getting right into it. I was not sure to talk about this one, but I think one that would bother you as a human, especially a lot of other humans, would be Out. And I read this. This is a mystery. Actually, it's not a mystery. It's a thriller. And I read it last year during our reading challenge as my book to read from a country that you want to visit. It's my Japan one. So it's a Japanese thriller, and it takes place in the 90s. And it's not necessarily a mystery because you know who killed the person. It's this lady kills her husband, and then her coworkers try to help her get away with it. So they try and help her dispose of the body, and when the investigation comes and all these things happen, so there's some gory, gruesome details of like dismemberment, but also in the 90s, Japan, at least I think it takes place in the 90s, might even be earlier, I don't know, patriarchy or whatever, women are like second-class citizens. Like
I think they still are.
It's like, yeah, I don't really know too much about it, but like the wives can't even answer for their household. Like if the men's not present, then and like all these things show through in the story, and it's all these ladies and these wives that are trying to get away with something, but like they're just thought of second-class citizens.
Yeah.
So all of that was a lot to take in. And then the more things happen and the deeper crap that they get into made it a pretty decent thrill ride to how they were going to get away with it. But the ending was horrible. And going through reviews online, a lot of people agree like the last 2 chapters just kind of diminished a lot of the book, and it made it even... If anything, those were like even darker times. That just was a really ridiculous twist. So Out is one that not necessarily a recommendation. I think it's worth reading if you really like thrillers and twists. But the ending just wasn't great. And it's hard to talk about endings that aren't great because it's an ending.
So my second was The Forgotten Girls, which is a Danish mystery thriller. It
The
is
Danes.
translated to English. So when you're reading it, there's sometimes where you're reading it and you're like, this does not make sense, but it's because it was translated. So you have to kind of remember that when you're going back, and then also keeping in mind that it is a different. It's a different country, so the way that they do things is a little bit different. So sometimes you'll have to maybe reread a chapter or something like that to kind of understand what's going on. But it is like I said, a Danish mystery thriller. It's, I guess, kind of detective-ish. It's a disturbing case with a creepy setting. It has a mental hospital, a children's mental hospital aspect to it. It's very fitting because it opens on a dark and stormy night in a creepy forest.
Nice.
So, very fitting to this. But it was good. It was dark, and as I have told you when I read it, everybody said expect dark when you read something from that country because they write very dark novels and that kind of stuff. It was creepy, but it was very enjoyable. And as somebody who doesn't read dark books, I enjoyed it. The mystery was good. The thriller part was not too much for me, so that was good, and I really enjoyed it.
So my next one, it shouldn't be any surprise that Stephen King writes very dark and bleak books. I mean, he writes a lot of awesome horror, but I think horror is different than dark, because there's usually a different kind of, horror is meant to be scary and darker, but if there's a thriller mystery type element and it also has dark tones, I think those are two separate things. And the one I'm going to talk about specifically is The Long Walk. Now, I haven't read too many Stephen King books, but this one, it's the world that they live in, and there's not many answered questions about the world. It's our world, and you haven't read it, but it's once a year there's this contest where if you're a certain age and a male, you get to go on the long walk, and you have to walk at 4 or 5 miles per hour. I think 5 miles per hour. And the last person to drop dead, or fall off, or stop, actually literally drop dead, is the winner, and they get a wish.
I think it was 4 miles an hour because
we tested it. We tried to test it.
Yes, because we were going on a walk one day, and you were like, "This is as fast as you have to walk."
And it was a pretty quick pace, and they walked for 3 days straight. But it's our world, and they're putting it through this, and the media covers it, and there's an organization that takes care of it, but what kind of world are they living in where this is actually a normal thing and that it's accepted and people come to watch it like it's a sporting event? So I'm just wondering how did things get that way? And none of those questions are answered, which I don't like in books, where you're just everything's are ambiguous and left open-ended. But it's just interesting to see what kind of world that is, and then you're in the main person's head the entire time and all of his thoughts that he's going through, and the ups and downs of wanting to give up, and all the suffering that other people are going through, and watching these other contestants die, and then having your own walking until your feet bleeds, and traps you in much more than you think. Because I never thought that a book just about walking for an extended period of time could actually pull you in.
Yeah.
But it really does. It is a book of resiliency for sure. So your next one is one that we both read, so
yes.
That's a good segue for others.
So this is actually the last one that I have on my list. It is a detective thriller about human trafficking and modern slavery. It's called Livy Alone. And Livia's backstory is very dark. And every time they do a flashback in the book, I cringed. Because I knew something bad was coming and something really dark. And it was hard to read some of these parts of the book. So her story and then the story of her sister, it was rough. And it goes back to the child rape and murder and those kinds of things. Obviously, it's a human trafficking story. And it's sad. and so many parts broke my heart. But this chick is a badass. She tracks down rapists and crime lords and kills them, which is pretty awesome. And she does jujitsu, which is really cool. And it's really good, but it's very dark.
Yeah, and I would agree that there's all those dark tones, and the story that she goes through is pretty bad, but I mean that's also kind of like that really happens nowadays. And also, once you get through it, if you can get through it, it adds to her story and her character, and it makes sense because that is her entire motivation. So to understand her motivation, you're definitely rooting for her even more because of all the stuff that she's been through.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I don't think I've ever read a book, well, I'm sure I have, but a detective series where the main character goes and kills people. Like, that's just not something that you normally read very often. So when I first read that, because that's basically how it opens, I was like, wait, what? This is a detective series? And then I kind of got past that and through her story, and it was a really good book. It was it pulls you in and it keeps you intrigued and trying to figure out what happens next, which was really great for a detective series. Obviously,
it's Dexter-esque, where something happens when they were a kid and it shapes their psychology and their motivations and who they are going forward, and they have a job to help catch bad people, but they also have a vigilante side to them to where they, once slip through the cracks, they just take it into their own hands. So if you like Dexter, but I mean honestly darker than Dexter
a little bit,
then I would check out that. I've mentioned it once or twice. And Barry Eisler in general, he has 3 different thriller series in the same world, which is just our world, but 3 different main protagonists. And I went on to the second one, which you're about to.
And just started it.
She crosses paths with another one. I think that's another one of her series. Either way, they all kind of meet eventually. But still, yeah, Leave You Alone. It's definitely on the darker thriller side, but it's well worth the read. So one that we both read, Sword of Kaigen.
Yes.
Kind of has dark tones to it.
It does, absolutely.
And it's a mix of, honestly, just like without the females being repressed in this one part of the world, this area, and then the government kind of having secrets and cover-ups and that sort of thing. And there's a lot of death. There's people that die that you weren't expecting to die. And then it's not only all of those things, because those happen in fantasy, but the final battle happens at like 70% through the book, and then the last third or last quarter of the book is the fallout and the grief of after a battle, after these huge, tremendous things that happen. And while it was like a 4 out of 5 for me for other reasons, but it was still really, really well done, and a lot of people love it for everything that it did. So I definitely think that is qualifies.
I think it was more with 3 out of 5 for me. Another detective thriller that we both read, The Chestnut Man. That was also dark.
Yep, that's Scandinavian as well.
Yes.
Written. They can just write some dark things, I guess. Chestnut Man's very good,
dark outlook on life, I feel like.
Well, they don't get much sun up there.
But very good.
Yeah.
It was it sucks you in, and you don't know. It's hard to figure out who did it, which was thrilling in and of itself.
You're only like 85% sure like who did it 2 pages before it's revealed, and you're like, so you can't really say like, yeah, I saw that coming. It was like, yeah, well, you're basically just led right there.
I totally thought it was somebody else.
Yeah. Because like all of those, you try and figure it out and think like, yeah, I saw this coming, but then you get to it and it makes sense. It's not like it's a cheap one. It's not like an unreliable narrator that kept information from you.
Let's not go there. That was a great book.
It was, but I still have issues of certain unreliable narrators that keep you in the dark just for suspense. Man, I feel like one easy for these dark type things are the dystopian type stories. Like Red Rising is definitely one and it has dystopian feel to it because of the class system. Mm-hmm. And
I mean,
Hunger Games is kind of
yeah.
The like things that the world puts other people through, like oppression and stuff. Silo could be.
I was gonna say like the first and second silo, maybe not the third, not the last one, because it has a.
Yeah, I feel like whenever there's a governing entity or agency or whatever that is in charge that is just full of lies and keeps people in check and in line certain ways, and even like kills people and covers them up, is definitely on the darker side.
I think anything where at the end of the book you don't feel good is dark, but that's just me because I like feel good.
Yeah, I guess. And Silo legit could be a thing.
It could.
I could see people doing
And that
what
would
they
be
do.
really sad.
Yeah.
And very dark. After the first Silo book, I was like, that is not a world I want to live in. So I could see that, yeah. That could be dark. That could be considered dark, maybe.
Yeah.
It's not demented. I guess sometimes I...
There's like psychologically dark, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I associate dark with demented. So I think of where it's like things you definitely don't want to be associated with, not necessarily like that's a grim outlook on things.
Yeah.
So I guess there was like, for instance, grimdark, where it's kind of
gory.
Yeah, but then you have like, well, that just sucks, and it's not gonna get better kind of dark.
Yeah, it's either like psychologically, I want to be nowhere near this person, or that world sucks. I don't want to live in that world.
In which case, you could probably think of a lot of books that end with, ugh, that was not happy. That really sucks, and I don't want to be there.
I'm listening to the audiobook now, Atlantis Gene, and this is probably written 10, 15 years ago, and they discover a old civilization type things, and it was like 50,000 years ago how humans changed, how their brains changed, and why all of them died out, and it's because there was this, I guess, essentially this virus, and when you open these things, they unleash this virus, and 4 to 5% of the nation dies with flu-like symptoms.
Oh.
Sound familiar?
Considering we're in lockdown right now.
Yes. That's why we're recording these videos, because we can't go anywhere.
Or do anything.
2 staycations canceled in the last 2 weeks. Not bitter at all.